So we're back. Hey Ma, so how are you doing so far?
Okay.
Excellent. So I wanted to talk about a few important things that you just have to know in HTML when you're working in HTML. And so far we didn't really talk about them because, well, we didn't want to talk too much. We wanted to start doing things. One of the most critical things in HTML, like we said in our last lesson, last week, we said every tag that opens has to.
Close.
Yeah, exactly. So every tag you open, you have to close. We didn't say, though, that when do you have to close it? And it's really important to know when you have to close it. So for example, in this scenario where you have a head that opens and closes, we wouldn't open up a title and then close the title up outside of it, because we would break the structure of the application. Every time we want to close something before we close the thing that was above it. So if we opened up a header and inside of it we opened up a title, we have to close the title before we close the head.
Okay.
And the reason is very simple. HTML is like, it's simple, but it's complicated to explain, I guess. HTML, literally, the language itself is like a tree structure. And you can't like create a branch, which basically this is like a branch, and then in the branch itself have it leave the branch it was in. So literally, it is this analogy of a branch. So HTML has a branch that inside of it has HTML and has another one which is a body. So the head and the body are like siblings. And the title itself is like the child of the head. So the child of the head can't leave the parent. It has to be bounded inside of that boundary area. That's one thing that you just have to know. Second thing that you have to know regarding HTML is what I just said right now, that basically there's nesting going on, and that's what they call it in the professional programming jargon. When you have the title, and the title is inside of the head, it's nested inside, just like a little birdie is nested inside of a nest.
Okay.
And it's literally all you have to know. The most important thing when you're working with HTML, any tag, doesn't really matter what, you have to make sure that you're nesting it legally. That means, so if, for example, I would give you in an exam question or a homework assignment, something like this, would this be legal HTML?
No.
No, and the way to fix that would be to make sure that we close the H1 before we open up the P tag. Now, what if inside of our P tag we had what if we took this H1, this whole block, and we just put it right inside of the paragraph? Would that be legal?
I don't have an answer.
Well, is the H1 completely nested inside of the P tag?
Yeah.
So it's legal.
Oh, okay.
Okay, as long as it's all complete, as long as it's bounded inside. So what we just did is we turned a sibling relationship that H1 and P were like brothers. We turned the H1 to be a child of the paragraph. And that's completely legal. Although you would never do that in our scenario because you would never want to put a title inside of a paragraph. But it's completely legal HTML. There's no law that forbids you of doing that. And it would completely be a validated HTML. All right, so that's the most important thing that you need to know when you're practicing with HTML. And one of the things that most of the time junior developers or new to HTML people tend to get confused. And your best way of avoiding getting confused is every time you open a tag, always close it. Never wait to close it later. If you always open and close, you never have that issue. And the second thing is, one thing that I do a lot of times is just make sure that you're putting when you're closing your head tag, you're not closing it like this, because then it's hard for you to visually see that this is a child-parent relationship. So what I tend to do is I just click on that tab button and I make sure that my title will be very visibly the child of the head. Like that, it's very easy to see that this belongs here and that belongs there, and we have levels of importance. So for example, in our scenario with this P tag, what I would do if I would be building my own application at home, well, with you, then I would just click on the tab, make sure that it's aligned nicely. Now, if you're not working with a modern editor, well, you won't see this. So you want to work with a nice modern editor. If it's Dreamweaver, if it's Sublime Text, if it's any other editor that's really designed for building code in HTML. So I just added another P tag because I saw there's a paragraph here, so I thought, why not? And let me get rid of that as well. Save that, and there we go. So that is our video on structure, basically on nesting, which is what it's called. And in our next video, we're going to continue exploring a few other tags. Before we do that, we're going to learn about tags that don't have any content and how do you deal with a tag that doesn't have any content.